It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Welcome back to the second half of the show today on Halloween. And Mike, where's your witch's hat?
I thought about wearing it, but I wear it the other 364 days a year. So
That's good. That's good. So we're going to have a show today.
Normal for a day.
Yes, this is Mike's normal day. We're going to just talk a lot about what's been going on in Martin County, just to give you a great update on what's happening with the commission decisions. There's been budget decisions and all kinds of things. But before we do that, I want to thank Indiantown Marina. It is one of South Florida's best boat storage facilities located inland on the Okeechobee Waterway. Indiantown Marina is a well-protected hurricane hull. It's home to many in the cruising community who find the facility ideally situated and user-friendly. Indiantown Marina also has a do-it-yourself and full-service boatyard offering the best of both worlds when it comes to servicing your vessel. Electrical, mechanical, prep, shaft work, bottom painting, boat seating, you name it, Indiantown Marina can help you. And it truly is one of the safest places to keep your boats because it is located inland on Okeechobee Waterway. Thank goodness we didn't have a hurricane, which we're not quite over with the season yet, but hopefully that continues.
absolutely.
But if you need anything done on your boat and need storage, give those great folks a call at 772-597-2457, 772-597-2457, or visit IndiantownMarina.com. Also, I want to thank everybody that's sponsoring the fair this year. The fair is going to be February 9th through 17th, 2024. Mark your calendars. It is going to be so much fun. We're going to be bigger and better than ever. And I have some sponsors coming in already. I really appreciate you because we couldn't do the fair without you. H.E. Hill Foundation, Sailfish Roofing, and Ebers Law Firm has come in as a champion sponsor. Again, we appreciate it. And folks, you can visit Martin County Fair, martincountyfair.com for sponsorship packages. We have various ones. They start at 100, and I have one best of show. It's only one available, but you get a lot of things, including advertising on WSTU AM 1450 every week for a year, and there'll be 10 different spots during the week. So that one's a $25,000 investment, but it comes with a lot of packages, just like that additional advertising. But need your help, and certainly appreciate it. Martin County Fair, February 9th through 17th. Now I'm going to move on to Mike Syrkus. Mike is a near lifelong resident of Martin County, having moved here as a child and leaving only for college and starting his culinary career. Today, Mike works as a carpenter as well as a substitute teacher at his children's school. His community experience includes being a leader in the church's youth group, former board member of the Republican Executive Committee, and former board member of the Martin County Farm Bureau. Mike currently volunteers for the Martin County Black History Initiatives, doing historical research and engages in political advocacy at the state and federal levels. In his downtime, Mike enjoys traveling the state, sharing its natural and historic wonders with his wife and children. And I also know that Mike in his downtime watches the Martin County Commission meetings, and I see you in there giving valuable public comment.
I try to make sure it's valuable. I can't guarantee every time, but I try to offer something that's genuine and real, and what I perceive what's going on in the community. So
there's a lot of things there is a lot of things going on.
Absolutely.
They did just go through the budget, approval for the budget, and you were there sitting in that audience and made some comments, and made comments the meeting after the budgets because of decisions that are being made. It's important for people to get out there and do that, right?
It is. It's very important. It's funny I should say this, that it's encouraging, because I think a lot of people, when they saw the budget this year, was very discouraged. I mean, obviously we have a lot of money we're spending here in the county currently, and our population is really being taxed to the hilt. We are. Yeah. But what was unique coming out of this budget season was something that we haven't seen really not in my memory in the last 7 or 8 years of watching these meetings. I mean, it was a full chamber on both of the workshops, and a lot of people came out to speak. And what was really of note of that, I was thinking about it earlier as I drove over, comfortable people do not generally do uncomfortable things. And the truth is that getting up in front of your commissioners and having a 3-minute speech limit and knowing that you're going to say your piece, and maybe in 10 minutes or in 2 hours when everybody else is done speaking, there's going to be a rebuttal from the 5 commissioners, and you have no way of controlling or no way of even addressing it after the point. It's a very nerve-wracking thing. And
it is, and I have to say, they all are up on the dais higher than you,
yes.
And you they're public servants when you vote them in and they work for you, but yet they're sitting up. It's an intimidating process just to go in there and
it really is an
speak in front of
intimidating
them, and they're all looking down at you.
I don't have a whole lot of skills in my life. I'll be honest. I'm just trying to wing it here. But God has blessed me with the ability to sit down and have some conversations, to be able to speak and be a decent orator. I'm not great, but I'm decent. But even when I get in front of the commission, you can hear in some of my speeches, my voice will crack and my heart will start racing. And it's not like having a conversation with a friend like we're doing now.
It's not.
So to watch another 50 or 60 of your fellow community members going up and doing this, and you listen to some of their words, it's a very uncomfortable situation. And again, comfortable people do not do uncomfortable things. So to see this many people showing up really shows where we're standing right now as a community on a fiscal basis. There's a challenge out there. I mean, these nice young ladies just beforehand were talking about delivering goods to homeless on their bikes. And
right.
I mean, we have these challenges fiscally in the community. So to see so many people show up and get involved now, it's very encouraging, because now people are trying to take this active role and maybe stem the tide of some of the excessive spending we've had.
And Mike, I think people are more aware more than ever now, because things that are out of our commission's control, like inflation, has just skyrocketed here, the price of housing. So, I think people are watching the local politics and local commission decisions even closer, because all of our wallets are taxed.
Absolutely.
And pun intended there.
Absolutely.
In a lot of different ways. So every penny right now counts for a person living, here in the county. And you mentioned the homeless. It's a bigger issue here in the county than people realize.
We have a big issue of homelessness, or just people that they have their homes, but every year stressing to figure out how they're going to cover their property taxes. And then in conjunction with that, you have things like your insurance rates. You have your cost of FPL's gone up. FPL is extremely cheap for electric compared to a lot of others. Having lived in Tallahassee, having lived in Orlando, a lot of these local municipalities, I mean, I got hit with power bills in Tallahassee in college that are less than what I have now living in a single family home in Martin County. But it's still a big bill to hit.
It just keeps rising. Everything's rising at once, and it's tough for the people right now.
The county can't do anything about inflation. I don't put that on their shoulders at all. But when we look at the tax bills here in the county, our property tax bills, it's still $1 out of every $20 for the median family income. It's still $1 out of every $20 goes to local county taxes. Whether that's going to be your property taxes for ad valorem, your school board taxes, or gas taxes. I mean, all these things tend to add up, and $1, that's a lot to not save every time maybe you have an emergency come up, or again, looking at inflation, that's a huge jump year over year.
One thing I noticed, and the fair is a nonprofit, but one thing I noticed this year, there was a lot of nonprofits in that room, because that was one of the areas of the budget they were looking to save some money on.
Yeah.
And it's a tough thing. These nonprofits offer a lot of services, and it's tough to raise money in a time right now with inflation. It's
absolutely
to get people to donate. It's not an easy
not at all
ask for. So that support through the county is it's critical to a lot of these organizations.
And that's one of those things where I'm a huge proponent of forward planning. I firmly believe that if you set out a plan, and if that plan goes to garbage, that's fine. You can still sleep at night knowing that you did everything to plan in advance.
Right.
If you're proactive instead of reactive, you will always have more options. So this is why I'm always so harping on the finances, is that if we plan out better in advance and more long term, we can address issues that come up. And when we look at the nonprofits that came in front of the board, especially that second meeting, the first thing that came to my mind was how much of this is the chicken coming before the egg,
right.
Because these nonprofits are providing a highly, highly needed service here in the community. I mean, we have a lot of people in the community that are hurting and rely on these not-for-profits just to be able to survive. But at the same time, what's causing people to hurt in the community? I mean, we're in the top 3 highest ad valorem taxed citizens in the state of Florida out of 67 counties. And then when you add all your local option taxes on top of that, we're, if not first, which we were 2 years ago, second place for the most tax resident in the county. So at some point you got to question, you can only take so much money, or take so many cookies out of the cookie jar before you stop eating cookies.
This is why I like to have Mike on here so well. You can see how well studied he is. Let's step back for 1 second.
Please.
Ad valorem taxes, what is that?
So ad valorem taxes, this is the big one on your tax bill. You have two big chunks, I should say. You have your school board taxes and then your ad valorem taxes. The ad valorem is on the Martin County government side, and this is their general fund, essentially. And that is taxed as a percentage of the value of your property. So your millage rate, for example. One millage point is $1 to every $1,000 value of your home. So when you look at the bottom of the bill, it says 17 millage points. The best way I tell people to estimate your tax bill, take your value of your house, divide it by 1,000, multiply it out by that. We're at 17.6 millage points, somewhere in that neighborhood. That's going to give you an idea what your property tax is going to be before the trim notice comes. So the ad valorem is really that biggest chunk of it. I think we're at somewhere 5.3, 5.5 millage points. So that's a huge chunk out of your property tax bill. And again, about half of it goes to the school district, which is a whole different fund. And I mean,
yes.
Just talking about property tax bills as a whole, a lot of people don't realize Martin County, if you take the school board budget along with the county budget, and then you also have South Florida Water Management has a small piece of the pie. We have a collection in Martin County of property taxes right about $1.3 billion a year. And we're a county of 163,000 residents. So that is a massive expenditure. The school district, they kind of struggle because a lot of that money gets remitted to the state, and then the state remits back depending on how many students are in the school.
Right.
So that's a very tricky one. That's a budget that's a headache and a half. I tip my hat to the men and women that have to deal with that budget. That's a hard one to play with.
It is, because like you said, the money we collect doesn't necessarily just go to our school system.
Exactly. So you're very limited in how you can exercise those funds, which I think is why Martin County is as giving as we are when it comes to these supplemental taxes for school district. We see that half millage point as well as a half cent going to the school district, one for infrastructure and another for personnel. We recognize that there is a need. I mean, it's an expensive operation to run our schools, and so much of it, we donate a lot of money to neighboring counties that have a much lower property value than we do. So a lot of kids in Clay County, in Polk County, or Hendry County that are going to school thanks to the generosity of Martin County residents.
And on that,
that's
Mike,
a state thing we can't control.
We can't control, and that's something to bring up because a lot of the counties that aren't as wealthy as Martin County, we do have to subsidize those counties in essence. So every time when the state legislature comes and gives another tax exemption for property taxes, whether veteran, emergency responder, age, whatever it is, some of these counties are collecting zero taxes because they're property levels are so low to begin with. When you give a $25,000, $50,000, $75,000 exemption, all of a sudden there's no property taxes, but they still have to fund fire departments, police departments.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
when you're in a wealthier county like ours, you don't recognize that because $75,000 on a $500,000 house, we'll take it. But
exactly. We'll
it's
take
not like
it
that
because
everywhere.
It saves us some money. And on the school board side, I will say the vast majority of those exemptions do not apply on your school board taxes. So if you have a property valued at let's say $100,000 or $125,000, you have $75,000 in exemptions, your property taxes are still going to be higher for the school board side because they don't get exempted off all the supplemental exemptions. So, but nevertheless, it's still, like, to your point, it's still kind of a drop in the bucket on our side, but for smaller counties, and these are usually rural, more agrarian counties where they're producing the stuff we need to live, quite literally.
Right.
We need food to live, but if you're taxing them to the nose, then they're not going to be able to continue to stay on that land, especially in a state like Florida where land has such a high value. And this is why we see a lot of bills going through the state of Florida that set aside funds to protect those rural lands, essentially selling developmental rights to the state to stay on the land, keep your family on the land, and be able to farm it and keep us fed.
Very important, thank goodness.
A very tangled web.
It
very
truly
fitting
is.
for Halloween.
Yes, here we go. Yeah. You don't have your hat, but you got the tangled
I
web in.
don't.
So, Mike, tell us a little bit, let's talk about the budget a little bit more. What are some issues on the county commission coming up that people should be aware of? I know that there was a property purchase in Palm City that you had a
There was a property
opinion on
purchase
that.
in Palm City, and without a doubt, I'm very opinionated on it. And this goes back to that earlier statement about forward planning. So this particular property in Palm City was a perfect example of reactionary actions taken. So the CRA was, I guess it was about 10 years ago now, extended in Palm City from Map Road down 714 to the corner of 714 and Berry. And this was done to extend and encourage a business operation that wanted to come into the area, but it wasn't zoned properly. So the CRA decided they were going to extend that area, and the Board of County Commissioners supported that action, which essentially turned everything from Map Road to Berry Road on 714. That is now part of the old Palm City CRA, which is specifically intended for spurring growth and development within both business and community. Now, there's a whole lot of details into what businesses can be there, what can't. You got to meet the guidelines of the CRA. But this is in a layman's term, intended to be your downtown area, your downtown district. And now we have this parcel of land in Palm City. It's 6 acres. 2 acres are easement, permanent easement to a community behind them. So essentially 4 usable acres. And we go forward, decide to get a purchase it for $4 million. Now, that's a lot of beans. I mean, $1 million an acre, I have a little bit of acreage. So if somebody wants to give me $1 million an acre, I have no intention to leave, but money talks.
Right.
And at that value. And the truth is that there's 160,000 people in this county, and a lot of people's ears perked up and said, whoa, if we're gonna let the county start buying us out to avoid development, I have some land too. And it's not important. It's a very slippery slope. And you know, to Sarah Hurd's credit, she brought this up, or a couple commissioners, I should say, brought this up, that this is we're opening Pandora's box. And you know, it's really unimportant who, but from several different districts, out of the 5 districts in the community, I've had several from multiple districts that have made a statement to me already. I got land, I'll sell. And these aren't people with quarter-acre house lots. These are people with 10, 15, 20, 100 acres in the community. And it really just demonstrates that lack of forward planning, because if you intend this to be a developed area, and now all of a sudden you have this proposal come forward, you may not like the proposal, but this is why you have these staunch guidelines to begin with. And unfortunately, instead of the county deciding, let's take a look at our guidelines, let's take a look at the CRA and see, maybe we made a mistake, none of that's even been planned for, but they decided to go forward with a $4 million land acquisition, and we'll have a public meeting later, how will we use this land? But still, the elephant in the room, we haven't addressed what led to this issue to begin with.
And that's a really good point, Mike, is the County Commission has to deal with a lot of things today that were actually decided on a decade ago, 20 years ago. And you know, even with these CRAs, it is a Pandora's box with them. One of the issues I find with it is the CRAs were created, there's rules with them, and now if you change those rules and take away what a zoning use on a property, you're going to have some property owners that said, hey, you just took away my land rights, what I was going to use my property for, and that could create a lawsuit.
Absolutely.
So, when these decisions are made and how these properties are developed and how these CRAs are defined, it is absolutely critical that these commissions are held accountable at the time. They're going to be looking at the rural lands. They're supposed to be studying that after the property down on Bridge Road.
Yep. Yeah, the rural lifestyle amendment change. Yep.
You know, they're going to be looking at different rural lands, and this is a time where we as a community have to make sure whatever decisions they're making today doesn't come back and bite the community a decade or two from down the road.
This is one of those real big challenges, because we have plan outs, we have our 30-year comp plans, we have every 5 years, or is every 5 or every 7 that we review these comp plans, and we have zoning already established. But for a long time in our community, not just this administration, but administrations the last 20 years, 25 years, we've had these heavy cycles of just absolutely no growth. We're not going to do it. And then we go through these boom periods now where it seems like you can't kick a stone without hitting a contractor somewhere.
Right.
And because we have these heavy cycles, and so many of it being these developments, they got special exemption here, we're going to add you here, we're going to give you a special authority there. You know, it's non-cohesive, and this non-cohesive nature has so many issues downstream, not just with the volume or how quickly things are built, but I'll give you one, water conveyance, for example. We remember a couple years ago we had about 100 inches of rain over the period of 4 months, 5 months? Down in Hope Sound, and we ended up having to apply to both state and federal level, FEMA, trying to get money to acquire some of these houses that are flooded out. Well, if you go down those neighborhoods, you'll find houses, one of them will be 4 feet higher than the other. And a lot of this is because when they're building these houses, the building codes change year over year. And then the height and the elevation of the roads change every 10 years, 12 years. Every time you redo the road, you don't excavate the old road and put a new one in. You skim the top, you put another layer on. So when I look at building codes back in the 70s, where you built at the level of the crown of the road, or you built maybe 6 inches above the crown of the road, today I think building codes somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 14 inches over the crown of the road. So in 40 years, your road has grown 12 inches and your building code's gone another foot above that. You're going to have a brand new house in 2020, 5 feet above the house from 1970.
Right.
Well, water goes downhill.
Where's it going to go? That's right.
It's just cohesive planning when we're trying to put these neighborhoods in place. This is why we have things like an urban service boundary, an urban service district. This way you're concentrating your building into these areas so you can kind of do them all within the same relative time period, same 5, 10, 15-year period. We're not having a 50-year celebration from one neighborhood, or separation
right.
from one neighborhood to the other.
Right, right.
And this is just one of hundreds of variables that come into play. And again, we talk about growth management department. You want to talk about a group of people that have to deal with a lot of headaches. You know,
For sure.
God bless those
For
folks.
sure.
You know, because they have to compare these things when they're looking at these developmental plans. And it really is a challenge because they're stuck between state regulations now versus the reality of what's in place, which is why these land studies become so important. But also, if you have a land study, let's make sure we're not chopping it up and making special exemptions throughout the entire process as well, because now your land study is worthless.
Right, right. If you are going to do special exemptions. It's a big headache, and I appreciate you coming on because it's easy to complain about growth and it's easy to complain about the development, but there are rules in place in the county and regulations to be followed, and it's a lot of these decisions have been made years ago.
It really, I mean, to give you a personal story, not to get too crazy about it, because I know there's plenty of people watching online. I mean, I really hate seeing how much growth and development we have. And
well, it's hit us so quickly in the face since COVID. I mean, it's just been on fire with
I make my money in construction. I'm a carpenter. That's what I do by trade. And even I am just so burnt out seeing the volume, what's going on. And you know, a couple weeks ago, about a month ago now, when we had all those heavy rains in that 4-day period, 5-day period, I live in Palm City, not too far from the property that was just purchased. And we saw Danforth Creek rise almost 15 feet overnight. I mean, Berry Road ended up being flooded from Danforth with water running through just because of how much drainage was coming from the west side of the county running through. And with all the volume of development, the Tractor Supply, we see a lot of the clearing, FDOT, all their clearing for the widening of the road. You know, it's really taken a lot of predators and pushed them into Danforth Creek and created almost like a thoroughfare for animals. And I have some livestock on my property. We ended up losing about 60 chickens that night because when the waters rise, the predators get forced out of it. You know, we talk about things like the bear that ended up at the sheriff's station a few months ago. You know, they're being forced from these areas, from rapid development, they're being forced in these areas. So, I mean, by all means, I really hate seeing this growth and development, but I also recognize that if we're not planning in the future and we continue to chop up and make a rash, reactionary decision, that's not going to solve the problem. But more importantly, when we spend huge sums of money, we don't have the financial capital to actually address a problem when we do have a solution. Not to mention we're spending time on symptoms instead of addressing the disease.
It's tough too. I think about everything that's happening, and then we had, of course, SB 102, the Live Local Act, that you can build multifamily on commercially zoned properties, and the county cannot stop it. You know, is the cat already out of the bag? Is there any way to reel this in, or we just, you know, there's been so many decisions that have been made in the past that we have to live with today, and again, you can't just go and change the rules because somebody bought property based on the regulations and zoning it had at that time.
I like to be realistic about things, and I tell people that this is a multi-generational issue that we've created. So anybody's going to make you a promise that they're going to fix it in 4 years if elected, they're selling you a line. Don't buy it. You know, this is going to be a multi-generational solve. I like the idea of the forward planning when we talk about land use and stuff like that, the forward planning, because we can get our steps in order, but ultimately it's going to be a long term of thinking out our actions and analyzing where are we realistically at today, where do we want to see ourselves in the future, and understand that people are still going to come here, people are still going to build, families are going to expand, so we need to be able to build out that long-term plan. And when something comes up, like this land purchase in Palm City, for example, yes, that's a small situation. It may not be what we initially envisioned, but the grand scheme, it falls within what that area is supposed to be or what you intend for that area to be.
Right.
And it's unfortunate to see that progress to some people. And personally, I'm one of those people, I'd hate to see 9 departments there. But having said that, I also recognize that's what that area is intended to be. And if we're not doing it there, we're going to see more expansion out to areas like the west side of the county or other areas that are environmentally sensitive lands, and those being developed and just using land credits in other parts or other areas.
It is. It's a sticky situation. I looked at that Palm City property and I thought, you know, maybe the Danforth community would have a special assessment and they could buy it and turn it into a park if they want or something like that. I can see it's a struggle. Our county commission is trying to reach out to the residents that are saying to stop the development. We know what can we do, because their hands are tied to it to a great
and
degree.
to your point about private people, conservation, I think it was Conservation Florida, the Conservation Fund just announced the other day 20 acres that were purchased in Hope Sound for $1.2 million, which creating a link into the Loxalucy area.
Right.
So I mean, you're looking at 20 acres for $1.2 million, and 100% of that's private donation. So
it's possible to do it that way.
not only is it possible, I mean, if you look at the nuts and bolts of it, we got 6 acres for $4 million, and we're going to borrow for 10 years,
Right.
which will probably be another $1.5 million worth
Right.
of interest. So 6 acres for close to $6 million versus 20 acres for $1.2 million. I mean, not only is it possible, but I would suggest that maybe even the private sector is going to do this much better than the governmental sector is going to do it.
And I worry too, because I know that the legislature passed a bill that the county government has to put their public lands on the website that's available for purchases. I don't know what's going to happen with that property if the county owns it. I don't know. I'm not saying it it has to go on there or not, but it's just like when Tallahassee starts making decisions that take over local rule and eliminate local rule, it worries you about these different projects that we're trying to protect ourselves, but will Tallahassee take that protection away? That's kind of what we're talking about today. We're trying to protect things for 20 years from now. Is Tallahassee going to come in and say any kind of county-owned property has to be put on the market at whatever value? I mean, we don't know.
We don't know, and that's why it's so important to make sure that when we're doing something, really thinking through our actions and planning forward and not being reactionary, because other variables will come up and they're going to alter your plans in the process. But if you start with a poor plan, the best you're ever going to do is going to be a poor plan. You start with a great plan, worst case scenario, you're going to end up with something that ain't as great as you wanted.
Again, we've been speaking with Mike Syrkus. This show will air on WSTU AM 1450 on November 8th at 10 a.m., but you can catch it, of course, right now on Facebook Live and also on my YouTube page, which is The Casey Ingram Show. It'll be uploaded within 24 hours. Mike, thank you so much. I'm going to have you back because he watches all the government decisions, state, federal, and local.
I enjoy coming and talking with you.
My pleasure. I learned so much from you. Appreciate it so much, Mike. And have a happy Halloween.
Thank
you. Got some
you as
kids,
well.
so absolutely. Thank you so much. We'll put our witches' hats on after the show.
Get my Reese cup.
There we go. You take care now. Thank you.